moving right along. I'm going to talk about offer the fruits of service back to the divine for which it comes. So in other words, don't take credit for your successes or your failures. It's a very important thing. We all have varying degrees of success or failure in what we do. And just say, God, you did this through me. And with all sincerity, not now kind of a display. Swami said when people would touch Master's feet, which is a sign of respect, particularly in India, he would always go like this. I offer your devotion and your reverence to God. And once Swami said, after he was giving a talk as a young minister, some person in the audience came and said, "Oh, that was such a wonderful, wonderful talk." And he just said with humility, "God is the doer," not wanting to take any credit. And she said, "Oh, really?" Meaning I knew it was good. I didn't know it was that good. But, sometimes, if you're sharing spiritual teachings, people put you in a certain category, and it doesn't necessarily help you if you're taking that praise or that feeling of, you're special to yourself. And in the early years, I think Swami, looking back in our time with Swami, I see how he was always training us. I didn't see it at the time, but he was always training. And very often on Sunday morning at about 9 o'clock, Jyotish and I would just kind of sit by the phone because the phone would ring and it would be Swami. And he would say, I'm not feeling too well today. Can you give Sunday service? Of course, Swami, of course, Swami. So we would always say yes, but it happened quite frequently. And so we sometimes thought, let's unplug the phone at 9 o'clock on Sunday morning. And then we were in attending a interfaith council breakfast of ministers of all different faiths and priests and rabbis in Grass Valley, the local town. And so it was a breakfast, and I was sitting next to this woman who was a fundamental Christian and kind of a little bit pompous. And she looked at me and she said, "When did you get the call?" And I couldn't help it. I said, "Usually about 9 o'clock. But it's just not to take yourself seriously. And that's the point of service. If you take it, I'm serving and God's flowing through me and I have the right attitude, you're missing the point. Just don't take credit for anything. And if you blow it, you just say, "Oh boy, that was a disaster," and you walk away. But everything, just to say, God's the doer, not me. I'm not taking credit for it. And then everything becomes very sweet and very easy. And you don't, it's spiritual, it's a spiritual detriment. Even if you have a wonderful meditation, to think, I had a good meditation. I can guarantee you from my own experience, as soon as you think that, you won't have good meditations for a while because you're not taking it right. But if you have a good meditation and you just say, "Thank you, God. I felt your presence. That was a gift," then you build on that. So working in a way that you don't take credit for anything you do. And okay, I'll tell that story the next point.
Can we wait? Can we wait? They won't listen. They won't listen to me. They'll be waiting for this. I think
so. George Burns and Gracie Allen, One of the most beautiful examples of humble, selfless service that I have witnessed in my life in over decades was Swami's cook and housekeeper, Leela. And she was the most amazing person, so humble. All she did was cook and clean and wash and iron his clothes. She traveled with him. But every meal, and I watched her, every meal was beautiful and well presented, and things he liked, and things that were good for his body. And you think, well, okay, why is that so hard? She did this all over the world. Like if they had just flown into India, they'd get settled in his house, and so I would say, "What's for dinner, Leela?" They just arrived, but she would have to plan ahead and tell people what to have, what food to have ready, that she could cook a meal for him. And one time we were in Assisi, and he invited us all in the afternoon to go into town for tea. And Leela kind of paused because she knew she wouldn't be back in time to cook dinner, but she planned it. So she made something ahead of time. So we get home, it's right before dinner, and Leela rushes into the kitchen. I said, "What are you doing?" She said, "Well, it's nice to have," and she puts on her apron, "it's nice to have a nice fragrance in the air when you're eating." So she was sauteing herbs. They weren't going to be used for anything, but just to have the fragrance of fresh basil and sage and the, I mean, that kind of service. And with utter joy, Leela passed away 2012, the year before Swamiji, and he spoke at her memorial service, and he said, through her service, her mind and her heart became absolutely pure and free, just through cooking and cleaning and ironing clothes. So I wanted to share with you that little story about Leela.